What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr Wargames, and today I am bringing you the update for branded Invoked Shaddolls. Now this does not include the Dogmatika package, it does not include Despias, and it does not include any high cost staples. Now what I mean by that is it does not have Dragoon, it does not have Droplets, it doesn't have Prosperities. I've tried to keep this as cheap as I possibly can, but also be as competitive as I possibly can for everyone at home. With all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe. We have a couple more branded profiles to come up as requested by you guys. And then next week we'll be moving into Ghosts from the Past. Stuff like Ghost Tricks, Agents, Fossils, you name it. So we're going to dive headfirst into this, and the way I've split the video up is again just to show you how evenly balanced the deck is. I'm going to show you the Invoked cards, then I'll show you the Shaddoll cards, and then I'll show you the branded cards. So you start off with, of course, triple Alistair the Invoker, alongside triple Magical Meltdown, one Terraforming, and double Invocation. Now, this engine is incredibly important and incredibly powerful if you don't have access to Aluba. Now, the reason that is, I wouldn't really advise putting both of these together because they both want to be normal summoned. It's then basically treating this as the Brave engine, and meaning that you only really benefit off of the Despia engine if you open up Branded Opening. Alistair is still such a crazy good normal summon card, and not to mention, in my opinion, Magical Meltdown is better than Branded Lost, for the pure fact that this is a field spell, and the fact that it gives you pretty much, you've got 6 copies of Alistair, 7 if you include the Terraforming, and then you can just build on from there. Now obviously Magical Meltdown does the exact same thing as Branded Lost. It protects your fusion summons so they can't be negated. They can still be ashed, but obviously the difference is Invocation can't be ashed, but it can be ghost spelled. Off the back of that as well, it does mean that your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to your fusion summon. So if you were to summon straight away Mirror Jade and use its effect on summon, your opponent could not respond to it. If you have Magical Meltdown in play and you activate Branded Fusion, your opponent can then not chain Imperm, Veiler, Ghost Bell, Ghost Mourner, you name it, to the summon of Lubellion. So it is incredibly powerful, considering the fact is you also activate Terraforming, that's an Ash target. You activate Meltdown, Ash target. You normal summon Alistair, that's an Imperm target. So ideally what I would advise you to do, so that Alistair resolves, is you'd actually go Terraforming, Meltdown, and then as everyone would expect you to normal summon Alistair, you activate Branded Fusion. Now obviously if they've let this all go through, they may or may not have an Ash Blossom. If they do Ash Blossom, then you normal summon your Alistair, and then you'll be expecting it to be hit with an Imperm or a Veiler. We all know that good Invoke players open up the Invocation anyway, so it's pretty much a waste. But the idea would be that you get Magical Meltdown into play first. That then lets you make your Lubellion. Your Lubellion will then play. Now, if your opponent is inexperienced, they will telegraph if they have an Imperm or a Veiler or some form of targeting effect in hand, because they might attempt to drop that on your Albion or, of course, your Lubellion. In doing so, you will then know that you can expect an Imperm or Veiler or anything like that to hit your Alistair, because they will not be able to do that through your Lubellion. Now the best thing about this, because we are using the Shaddoll package, is off of the Lubellion, not only will you get a discard, but you do also get, of course, get the send. Now the send can then lead to another fusion summon. So that can then lead to a Winder, that can then lead to a Construct, it can also lead to any other fusion monster you play in your extra deck as well. Speaking of the Shaddoll cards, we are playing one Shaddoll Hedgehog, one Shaddoll Beast, one Dragon, and one Aerial. So again, it's a relatively small package. Now the reason that we've done it this way is that Hog will get you into your Dragon, your Beast, or your Aerial. And the reason you do that is because you want to deck thin, but you also want to delay one of these effects. Now what I mean by that is by delaying one of these effects, it means you've got the ability to go into Polymerization and kind of go from there. Beast would be a free draw, Dragon would be a back row out, and Aerial is insane if your opponent has already activated DPE, because then you can just go Aerial, banish DPE, banish Dasher, and banish Celestial, so they're not going to get the draw, they will get no summon off of DPE whatsoever. On top of that as well, you can also activate Aerial to be banishing the stuff that your opponent is intending to activate a Branded in red with. So if you banish their Despia monsters, they're then not able to activate. The best thing about that as well is when you activate Shaddoll Fusion, if you've got Magical Meltdown in play, they would have to activate their Branded in red to the activation of your Shaddoll Fusion. So if they don't know that you've got Aerial and they're like, you know what, I'll just save my Branded in red, You go Shaddoll Fusion, and they'll go, right, okay, well, I'll wait for you to put your monsters on the board, and then after the resolution, I'll activate Branded in Red. Well, what you do is you send Aerial, and you send, like, so you'd send Aerial and then Dragon or Beast or anything like that, so you're going to be using it to go into Apollo more than not. If you've got Magical Meltdown on board, it will protect that entire chain. So it means your opponent cannot activate Branded in Red. So you'd go Aerial, target 3 in the graveyard. Straight away, you banish the 3 main cards that you want to get rid of. And then, or you can just banish all 3 Despias, which means Branded in Red will completely fizzle and they won't be able to activate it, which is really, really important. Then, of course, for the other Shaddoll spells, we've got 2 Shaddoll Fusion and 1 El Shaddoll Fusion. 1 technically Foolish Burial is more for the Shaddolls than anything else, and the 1 Schism. Now, the reason I've got 2 Shaddoll Fusion is because we actually play a lot of Fusion spells. So you've got 2 Shaddoll Fusion, 2 Invocation, 1 El Shaddoll Fusion, which is just another way of getting into a second window after it's been impermed or impermed or Dark Rulered. But the other reason we've got that is we've got 2 Mask Change 2, 2 Super Poly, and then off of the back of that we are also playing the minimised Patchwork engine, which is with 2 Edge Imps. Now, I'm actually highly considering bumping the Edge Imps up a little bit for the pure fact that this is your best discard fodder. So, or even poly fodder, it doesn't really matter. But you discard off a Super Poly, this gives you back advantage. You discard off a Mask Change, it gives you back advantage. The reason we've gone with Mask Change is because in this build like this, where you're going to lock yourself out of any other summons from the edge there apart from fusions, Mask Change is one of the best cards to get advantage off of an Alistair. And off the back of that as well, it does mean that your opponent starts to lose certain lines of advantages when they're trying to put cards into their graveyard. This is just a tech spot, so you can easily take it out. It's currently a 41 card deck, so you take these 2 out, puts it down to 39, and then I would consider looking at bumping the chain engine up. Now, a lot of people have said do 2-2-2. In this version, I'd probably want to go 3 chains at the minimum, and then decide if I want to see these. The only card in this engine that you see in your hand that kills the engine is Polymerization. If you see either of the other 2, it's absolutely fine. You still want Polymerization because this is an example of where Hog can actually be very helpful, because Hog can then search you out your Beast, your Aerial, or your Dragon, and then you can activate Polymerization to fuse with those. If you've got access to Guardian Chimera, I definitely advise putting it in because you do have multiple ways of getting to it, or mainly off the poly, but it is just such a massive board breaking card. But again, I've kind of opted to go without it to try and keep it on a budget restriction. Carrying on, we'll move into the branded cards. So the branded cards, we've got 2 Fallen of Albaz and triple branded fusion. Now again, this is very minimal. Now, there was no reason for me to put Kit in here because the way I kind of saw it was, I don't want Kit to be normal summoned. Like, I want Alistair to be my normal summon. If I don't have that's where a bit of an issue comes in. So you could put 1 kit in or 2 kits in if you wanted to, but you never want to see the pair in the hand. Once I've activated Branded Fusion, I've got the ability to special summon Kit. The only thing it's going to do is give me another Branded Fusion, which ideally I don't really want. You could put in the Condemnation as the trap card. You could also put Branded Lost in, and you could also put in Branded in Red. The Branded in Red would then be more specific because you would need to leave an Albaz in the graveyard, which is why I didn't go that route. So it kind of comes down to personal preference. I've kept this at a base minimum. The only thing lower you could do on this is cut an Albaz to 1, but that's very risky should your opponent get rid of it and you haven't got the ability to bring it back or get the play back going. It is entirely up to you, like I said, but this is kind of the way I've done it, is I've let Invoked and Shaddolls take the majority, and then the minority becomes the Branded engine, just because ultimately a monster that I try to make off of this will get me into a Mirror Jade. And off the back of the Mirror Jade, if I try to use it during my turn, I'll be sending an Albion. In this particular build, unlike the Despia version, you actually want to be using Ice Jade during your opponent's turn, so you send an Albion, and then you search yourself out of Branded Fusion for the next turn, and then that lets you go again. We've then, of course, got a couple of hand traps. So I've gone with 2 Crossout Designator, and the reason I've gone with Crossout Designator is the pure fact, and once I tidy all of these up into a nice little line at the top, we play a lot of hand traps, so we've got space to play a lot of hand traps. So we've got 2 Ash Blossoms, 2 Ghost Ogres, 2 Ghost Bells, and 2 Imperm. So not only can Crossout hit specific cards in the matchups, like Branded Fusion for the generic mirror match, but it can also hit Alistair, it could also hit Shaddoll Fusion in some of the mirror matches as well. But the Invoked engine struggles more with Ghost Bell than it does Ash. The Branded engine struggles with Ash. The Shaddoll engine struggles with Ash. So you've got all of these covered. You've also got the targeting effect, so you could put Veiler in place of this if you wanted to. But you've also got the ability of Imperm, which gives you that chance that if you play against Flunders and they've barrier locked you, or if you play against a DPE, you can Imperm them, you can change into a Chalice. It's entirely up to you. But this is basically like an 8-card engine which you can interchange with. Now, for those of you that are like, well, I want to put Dogmatikas in, Dogmatika can technically, right now, because a lot of people are playing the branded engine, I would only really want to play 1 Fleur de Lis, 1 Ecclesia, maybe 2 Ecclesias, and then 2 Nadir Servants. So you're looking at a 5-card engine. That can easily be a cut down on these if you wanted to. That could be the cut out of the cross out. It is entirely up to you. There is flex spots in this deck, as you've seen. Like if you're not a fan of the patchworks, you can take that out. It does give you a bit to play around with and adapt it to your own personal play style. But as you can see, apart from the hand traps, and even then, most players should have these by now, and if you don't, just use the Veilers and the Ogres. And apart from the crossout, which is probably the most expensive single card, I believe, at about £25, you should be good to get this a lot cheaper. Like when you compare this to the max rarity or the max expensive card, you've got your like droplets, that's like £100 each. You've got Prosperities, another £80 each, and then everything else like that on top. So moving into the extra deck, the branded cards, we've got the 1 Albion, the 1 Lubellion, and the 1 Mirror Jade. The reason we've got the 1 Albion is because it's rare that you're actually going to fusion summon it, but it is a backup should you not want to send it off of Mirror Jade to get its effect. But these are your only targets you want to use. Lubellion, there is a great little play where Albion can banish Albaz plus a Dark from the graveyard, summon Lubellion. Lubellion can spin those materials back into the deck or himself and give you a Mirror Jade. Keep in mind, Lubellion's effect means he can't attack, but Albion doesn't. So in theory, what you're doing is you're turning Albion, rather than getting rid of Albion itself, is you're going to turn Albion into a Lubellion, and then Lubellion will spin back to get you into a Mirror Jade. So you've got 2 fusion monsters for the price of 1. And that's obviously all going to come off the back of a branded fusion, not to mention when you start going into the Invocation engine. So the Invocation engine, you've got the Negate of Macabre, you've got the Control of Kaliga. So imagine like Kaliga, Mirror Jade, and Winder. Like, apart from Super Poly, your opponent just doesn't play that. They get 1 effect, they can special summon once, and the best thing about trying to drop a Winder during your opponent's turn is if they activate Branded Fusion and you activate something that summons out Winder, that's it. Their Branded Fusion is wasted. They can't even attempt to use Lubellion or Albion, which is absolutely beautiful, and there's no way for them to kind of chain to stop it, because Winder would be on the board after the chain's resolved, so they can't like interrupt the chain to do something. The Aggressor is a Geddes. The reason I've gone with this is because we actually play a lot of fusion monsters, so I thought this would be better than Purgatrio. If you do want to play Purgatrio, of course you put it in here. It'll be a little bit harder to do because you're not guaranteed to get a fire to the graveyard. You'll be relying on your Ash Blossom and your opponent's Ash Blossoms, which is why I went with a Geddes, because it's just a little bit more consistent. For the Shaddoll cards, we've got 2 Winder, 1 Construct, and the 1 App Cologne. Remember as well that when you summon these off of Schism, not only can they not attack directly, but you get to send a card your opponent controls to the same attribute. The best thing about that is if your opponent activates DPE and you chain Schism, Schism would resolve sending DPE to the graveyard. DPE would still be able to destroy a card, but the DPE would be sent, so it would not get its revival effect, which is really important. And in doing something like that, it does force your opponent to destroy another one of their cards because they can't destroy DPE. And then the generic like Super Poly targets and Mask Change targets, of course, the 1 Drax Depelio, the 1 Mud Dragon, and then the 2 Dark Claw. Like I said, these are flex spots. If you're not a fan of the Mask Change engine, which I personally really like, you can play around with it. But again, just look at the best thing about this is like, if Winder gets like Imperm Invaded or anything, you turn it into a Dark Claw, great. Your Kaliga can be turned into a Dark Claw, great. Your Alistair gets turned into a Dark Claw. 3 of your 4 Shadolls get turned into a Dark Claw as well. Even a Patchwork can get turned into a Dark Claw. But you want to be not Patchwork, sorry, the Chains. But you want to save your Chains for the discard effects, because Chains, unlike the Shaddoll cards, just says if it is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you trigger an effect. Whereas the Shaddoll cards is if they're sent via card effect, which is why I'd probably want to play Chains at more than stuff, because it just means that I gain additional advantage when I'm discarding them off of Super Polys and Mask Change 2s. So not only do I get a free Dark Claw, but I then get the ability to do a Poly to follow up with. So you're ending your board. Like I said, the only issue is like some of the best fusion monsters are Darks. So you're ending your board on an amazing state, but it is wide open for a Super Poly. So that's probably where you could arguably look at Secret Village of the Spellcasters as a side deck option. So that is something to consider as you put this together. Anyway, I hope this has given you a couple of ideas on your own build. Like I said, I tried to keep the cost down, which is why you don't see Goon, it's why you don't see the light Hexil, it's why you don't see like DPE or any other stuff like that. So it's entirely up to you on how you would like to build this deck. I really, really like it. It's definitely a deck that maintains competitive advantage, but also maintains a decent budget route as well for all of you not or waiting on those reprints, which is obviously incredibly important because those reprints are pretty much everything. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Make sure you stick with the channel so you can see more branded profiles, and we'll start to branch out back to our original schedule where we bring you other profiles as well. Like I said, with Ghosts from the Past, we're going to try and focus around the set releases so that you guys know exactly what decks you can build after you purchase those sets on top of that. Anyway, that's absolutely it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and happy dueling!